Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. We're so excited to have you tonight for our first edition of College Journey Conversations for 2021. And our special guest tonight, we're so excited to have him, Chris Andersson with Nothing But Drama. And I promised you all in all the Facebook posts that we would not have any drama tonight. So that's going to be a little bit of a conflict, Chris, but we're so super happy to have you and to talk about students and the arts. And what an awesome topic. Chris, how are you?
I am great. I'm great. I'm so happy to be here, Mark. It's so good to see you. It's been a
Um,
little while. It's
I'm overjoyed with your presence with us tonight and to be here. Just to kind of bring people up about the history of college journey conversations, I think it's really important for people to understand that this was all created last year in the midst of what was an unfortunate situation across and around the world, across the country, around the world. The pandemic was horrible, but it kept people at home. And I felt like this would be an excellent way for us to have conversations. And so I pulled together a bunch of my friends, and we ended up having a number of conversations. And I'm super excited to be able to start this year's college journey conversations off with you. And where are you located? Now, I think I know, but tell everybody where you are.
I think you know. Yes, I'm in New York City. I'm right in the middle of it all. I live just a couple blocks west of Times Square, so I'm in the theater district. It's perfect, perfect location
Oh
for
my
me.
gosh, what a fun place to live. Tell me something that's super unique about, I mean, other than like Times Square, but something super unique about like where you live that would just make people super envious of where you are.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'm in Hell's Kitchen is the name of the neighborhood that
Oh,
I live in, which is the west of the Times Square area. And one of the things, well, that's actually very specific about this because we have such a proximity to Broadway, and there's so many Broadway theaters close by. It affects the schedule of the neighborhood. And in my old apartment, I would every it took me a while to figure this out, but I would every so often hear this distant cheer of a crowd, and I'm like, what is that? And then I realized it was like the matinee crowd waiting outside a stage door for the stars so that they can get them to sign their playbills. And I'm like, this is so unique to just this neighborhood. It made it even more fun to have be that close to all the action with the
that
theater.
is cool. I've been to Times Square once. It was after dark and super bright.
Yeah.
That's one of the very unique things about Times Square, of course. Is it? I don't think it ever sleeps.
No, no, it doesn't
But
sleep.
how exciting for you to be in such a unique and special place, especially one where the arts are rather prevalent. I mean,
Yeah.
all the way from Broadway to super special shows, ballet, you name it. Um, it all takes place right there in New York City. So no one better than you to represent the arts, and the fact that you're an independent educational consultant yourself, much like myself, but very different. And that's part of what I think is unique about our conversation tonight is we're going to get to talk a little bit about, I hope, like some of those differences and the type of students that you serve, and the differences between the journeys a student might find that's on a more traditional track to
Mhm.
college than one who is planning to be in the arts. Um, Tell us a little bit about your background, Chris, and kind of where you come from and kind of what got you involved in the arts and all of that. Tell our audience a little bit about uh, really what makes you such an expert in this.
Right, right. Well, it all started, Mark,
Yes.
back in fourth grade when I played a proper noun in the missing parts of speech. It was a mystery. I'm not sure if that's what actually gave me the bug, but I was very lucky growing up here, actually, not in New York City, but around. And my parents were really wonderful to bring my brother and me into the city frequently to take advantage of the arts that are here. And so I think I started to get interested in theater that way, and then I did some of it in school, but I didn't have a lot of opportunity in the high school that I went to. So it wasn't until college that I kind of realized that's kind of I think what I want to do with my life, and I majored in theater and dance at school, and then I went on to work in as an actor for many years. And along the way, I fell into higher education administration. And I worked for 25 years in higher ed exclusively with theater students.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a great way to, meld my, to have a job that actually was in the field that I was, you know,
Yeah.
had studied and was in and enjoyed.
So when you say you worked with students in higher ed in the field of theater, were you like on stage with them, or were you part of the admissions process? And what part of higher ed were you involved in exactly?
It was more it's more in the administrative side and running programs. I ran a study away program for Trinity College where I went to school here in New York. That's in Connecticut, but they had a program where students would come from all over the country to study experimental performance at La Mama, which is a big experimental theater here in New York City. And so I ran that program, but it was so small that while I wasn't teaching acting or the movement classes or the voice classes, I was very involved with the students, setting them up on with internships, being their kind of the sort of counsel to them on various areas of their lives, taking them to see a ton of shows. And then eventually I also was teaching a class in arts administration and the nonprofit arts organization, so they could start thinking like artistic directors. If you were going to have your own theater, what would you be doing? What would its mission be? What would you do for a season, and fundraising and publicity and things like that? So that's how I was involved with them at first, and that was for quite a number of years. Then I did some recruitment and eventually landed a recruitment for the arts. That was the O'Neill Theater Center up in Connecticut, another college program that I was doing some recruitment. And then NYU came along,
Oh,
and that was
wow.
the most recent chunk of my career was working there. And that also was administrative in the sense, administrative makes it sound like I'm just like sitting behind a desk pushing papers, but that's hardly what I was doing. I was the director of admissions for the drama department at NYU Tisch School of the Arts for about 12 years. And it was a kind of a job, and this is actually good that you're asking this, because it was a job where I was able to use my background in theater, my theater training and theater experience, because I was the face of the department. I was doing information sessions, open houses. I had to educate people about NYU and about the drama department. And so the performer stuff that I learned was helpful. The improv skills that I learned was helpful in these conversations. So that theater education that I had actually served me in working in higher education, working for the university, and it was a great ride. And it was just it was fun to be the sort of friendly face for the families, the students and families who were going through a very nerve-wracking process that's super scary. But I was able to be the person who could be like, it's all good, we just want to get to know you and meet you, and you're just sharing your art with us. It's all good. So I went on from not only doing those info sessions, but then I hosted the artistic reviews, I did artistic reviews, I made the whole thing happen. So that's kind of my background.
Man, I mean, you have a very wide spectrum of influence, experience, especially knowledge to know kind of what it takes to get into the arts and really be successful in that. I would imagine, and I know in our just interactions at conferences and college tours that we've had together, you have definitely demonstrated a lot of that just in casual conversation. But you just kind of expressing it like this is just, it's just filled with a bunch of wow, right? You bring a huge wow factor. Definitely a knowledge base that can be utilized by families and students definitely who are wanting to get into the arts. Now let's talk about the arts just for a second,
Yeah.
because that term at least is used readily to describe a broad spectrum of programs at colleges and universities. And we want to be really specific tonight. Okay, so if we're talking about the arts, what exactly do we mean? What are we referring to when we're talking about the arts? So I'm going to let you kind of take the lead there and share with everyone. Let's kind of frame this up. What are we talking about?
I mean, for us tonight specifically,
Yeah.
like the my wheelhouse in the work that I do, as you said, as a consultant working with kids in the going through the artistic review process, is with theater students. So those
Okay.
could be acting kids, musical theater students, directors, or stage managers or designers. That whole range, and then film students who are studying film and are going through the film, preparing their film portfolios. But when we're talking about the arts, you know, we're to just start there. We're talking theater, we're talking film, we're talking music. You're talking visual art, right? That could be painting, drawing, sculpture. You're talking about architecture, or photography, or dance. Of how to get through that list without putting
Right.
dance in there. And there's variations and different kind of sub disciplines under those are big headings.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different kinds of dance that a student might specialize in, or theater, or film that they're filmmaking that they're doing, animation, game design, performance studies, cinema studies. Like, there are a lot of ways to study your art in college.
Yeah.
you know so I think, and tonight we might frame some of the examples that we use in the theater world, and that's the easiest way for me to talk about some of this. But a lot of
Sure.
the ideas about the arts applications and artistic review, that process, apply to all the different arts, across the board, I think.
Yeah. So let's talk about, since I would say your specialty is in theater.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference for you if it's dance theater or music theater? Excuse me, music. Well, I guess dance theater would qualify too, right?
Mhm.
Right. You can't have Oklahoma without a good dance scene,
That's
right?
right.
And then you got musical theater, and then just general. I'll just call it general theater, where there's
Uh-huh.
just acting on stage, where there is drama, right?
Yes.
Right. So yeah. So what's the difference in terms of their path to college? Do those look different?
They do. As far as the path to college, when you say the path to college, do you mean what these young artists' high school experiences are, or do you mean the pathway as far as like the application process?
Well, that's a good question, and maybe it's both and. When I ask that question, maybe it's both and, because one kind of doesn't go without the other.
Right.
One definitely comes before the other.
Right.
And so maybe in general, we're kind of talking about that entire journey, as it
Mhm.
were. Clearly, at least to me, and correct me, you're the expert. Um, it would appear to be that if one is going into any type of theater, that there needs to be some kind of experience in that. One would assume, at least. Now, am I wrong? Do students need to have that experience if they're planning on going into it?
Well, I will say not necessarily.
Ooh, I like that answer. Tell me more.
So, sure, is it helpful for a student to have some experience? Of course it is, right? Because then they're starting to make sense of the art form. They're starting to figure out, perhaps, at least right now, how they fit into that art form. Like, are they a performer? Are they a backstage person? Are they a director? Are they, what are they, what is their way into theater?
Right.
But we have to remember that students come from different school systems that have different opportunities to even do theater in them. Some students come from a school that has a very robust theater program, and they do lots of shows and lots of variations of things. They have drama classes in the high school, so there's a lot of opportunities for them to sort of learn about this art form in the high school, in their school. But then you have some students who come from a school where there's no program, right? They might be in like a one room school, right? You know, where they're like, we have one teacher or a couple of teachers that teach everything. We don't have a drama program. Like we're trying to make sure they're learning English and math and history.
Right.
So that you have students coming from both of those situations. And I think the beauty, to fast forward for 1 second, the beauty of the artistic review process as part of the college application is to just get a sense of where each student is in their own artistic development.
Got it.
So there will be experienced kids coming and there will be kids without experience, but the teachers that are doing the auditions are they're trained people who can see the potential in both of those students. So you may have decided every time I've seen two plays in my life, and like I know that's what I want to do. Like it's so exciting. I've never gotten to do a play, but it's so exciting to me. When I went, the experience was amazing. Like my mind was blown, and like I was like, I have to do this with my life.
Right.
Great. There's passion there, there's fire there, there's excitement there. So you haven't done it. That's what we're here to do. We're here to train you how to do it. So come on in. It's that kind of
Right. Right. And so that kind of leads me to my next question, actually, because you definitely have these students who have maybe never been on a stage before in their life.
Yeah.
Maybe they auditioned for American Idol, maybe they didn't, something silly like that. But nonetheless, they want to perform, they want to get involved. And then you have those who have been in every drama experience they could possibly get into, both on and off stage. And they absolutely love it because they want to do that for the rest of their life, per se.
Right.
And so those are two very different degrees of interest in a particular area of the arts, but both of them are wanting to go to maybe an art-filled school, whether it be specialized in theater or whether it be specialized in music or visual arts or non-visual arts, any of those, of course, in the spectrum. So one would imagine that the process to get there would be a little different for each of them.
Yes.
Right? How different? Like, what are some of those differences?
Well, you mean I would say the process of the you mean like the kind of artistic review process itself, or I should say application process itself?
Yeah, the applications, some of them are going to require some sort of portfolio,
Right.
or maybe even an audition.
Right.
And that audition would be, I would presume, because there might be a scholarship involved. There might be an actual, maybe the theatrical arts program as a degree requires an audition to get accepted specifically into that program.
Right.
Whereas the person who just kind of wants to do it, quote, for fun, because they just absolutely love being a part of it, but they don't want to major in it,
Right.
Doesn't have to necessarily go through that real intense audition kind of moment, correct?
That's correct. You're right. And that's actually a good thing to bring up. And I have a couple of thoughts on this in looking at it in different ways,
Yeah.
because it is important for the student to figure out ahead of time to what depth do they want to study their art. So you're making a very good point that there are some students who are like, this is what I want to do. I think this is what I want to do with my career. So I want to go to a conservatory program, a BFA program. And I want to have that immersive, very intense experience where with a BFA, we are training students in a BFA program to be able to work professionally when they graduate. So it is that they're giving them the skills and the tools they need to be able to do this as a career. So if you're someone you're like, that's it, that's me, that's what I want to do, maybe that's a route for you. Then you've got the student who's saying, okay, I really like theater and I do want to study it further in college, but I have other interests too. I have other academic interests that perhaps that I'd like to have a little bit more balance so that I can pursue these academic interests. But I kind of do want to have a concentrated study of theater. So maybe that's a BA program where you're acting, singing, movement classes, your Greek theater class, your directing class, your playwriting class. They're all classes just like your English, philosophy, and history classes are going to be. So you'll have a choice of 5 courses each semester, you know, and so that you're able to, you maybe the bulk of your upper level courses will be in your major, but you'll still have room to study other subject areas, right? Whereas in the BFA program on that end of the spectrum, the bulk of your coursework will be in the major, and you may have very little or sometimes even almost no outside of theater academic classes, right? So there's that. Then let's say the BA is too much for you. Like you were saying, you're like, I like theater, I want to be able to do it, but you know, I don't want to even major in it. I just want to be able to do shows every so often, right? So okay, so then what you're looking for in your college or university is you're going to say, look, I'm really interested in psychology. I want to major in psychology, but I love doing plays. So I want to, part of your research then when you're looking at programs is what are the opportunities for non-majors. So if I go to this school, can I be in plays? Is there a student drama club that you don't have to be in the BFA program to be able to actually do shows? You know, is there some kind of extracurricular theater stuff? Are there opportunities for me to take some courses, some acting classes if I wanted to as a non-major, you know? Or some dance classes or singing classes or voice lessons, whatever it is that you want to bring into your life as part of your college experience. So that just becomes part of your research to say what options are there. And are there even, you know, maybe you say, maybe you're at school, you're enjoying your life, you're pursuing your psychology degree, your English degree, your history degree, and you're saying, you know what, I'm looking at my friends that are over there in that drama department, and I'm like kind of like a little envious because I'm like, oh, they're like doing like they're all day long. They're like acting, singing, dancing, doing stage combat, doing script analysis, doing singing and improv and all this stuff. And you're like, I would love to have that. So another option is to look for, let's say, a study away program where you say, okay, I'm going to do a study abroad program for theater so I could experience the conservatory program for 1 semester. So I'm going to go immerse myself in theater, either here in the US, over in the UK, somewhere, wherever you find a program. I'm going to go do that for a semester so I can indulge myself. I can do all the acting and singing and dancing that I want to for a semester, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just eat, drink, sleep theater. It's going to be awesome. And then I'm going to come back to my school a different person, more refreshed. My inner artist is going to feel so wonderfully fed and satisfied, and then I'm going to jump back in and attack and re-engage with the other academic work that I'm doing. So there are a lot of different ways that they can look at their college experience, and then like you said, the way in differs, and it's pretty simple in that if you go for a BFA program, a couple of BAs, but generally the BFA will have an artistic review, an audition or a portfolio review. But a BA, most of the BAs do not. You just can declare theater as a major just like you would declare any other major when you get to the school. So there's nothing you have to do ahead of time.
Right. So, and so just to clarify for those who either are with us right now, which by the way, we're super glad you are, and thank you for joining us. But for those, of course, who are going to watch this later, the difference between a BFA is what you're saying and a BA. So let's clarify that for the viewer. So it would be a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and that's the one where you would probably be required to show some sort of portfolio or have some sort of audition because it's a very specialized art degree.
Yes.
And then you have the BA, which is the Bachelor of Arts. And you typically have the option to kind of choose your own major within the arts, and that could be any number of things, right? That could be in that, and then you would kind of attach on the experience of maybe a theater production or ceramics or whatever you decided to do, right? Onto that. Did I describe that correctly?
Yes.
That's awesome.
You know what you do.
It's nice to know that we're being clear, right?
Yes, and it's important because you're right. We don't know everyone who's joined us today. We don't know where they are in their own journey.
Right.
they might be way at the very beginning and be like, I don't know any of this stuff. So,
Right.
helpful to clarify.
Right. Well, you mentioned the BFA and the BA, and we live in a world of acronyms. You're an IEC and I'm an IEC, but what is it? We don't know. So,
Right, right.
being an independent educational consultant is super important. But knowing what the initials mean is even more important. So we want to make sure our viewers understand what we're saying there. Okay, so we've talked a lot about theater,
Yeah.
and rightfully so, right? But what other areas of the arts are we really talking about? Maybe not as much in your wheelhouse of expertise directly,
Right.
but definitely within your wheelhouse of nothing but drama, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, because the performing arts certainly are the ones that you're going to have auditions, right? So that would be theater, that would be music, that would be dance. Those are the primary kind of big heading areas where you're going to have auditions. If you're auditioning for a dance program, very likely there will be you'll go in person, and they'll teach a class. So you'll be one of with a bunch of several applicants. It'll be some variation of this. They're not all exactly like this, but that they might teach a class, and then all the teachers are there watching the class. So they're watching all of you while you go learn routines. You do them a few times, and they're watching everything about you to, again, it's not so much to judge you. It's really just to get a sense of where you are in your journey right now. Like,
Right.
what where your experience level is. What do you know? How are you picking up the choreography? All of that. And then sometimes they have a system where they do that class, they have a little deliberation while everyone has lunch, and then they come back and they call back some people that they feel were standouts, and then those students will often present a prepared piece that they've choreographed themselves, or someone's choreographed it on them as their piece for their callback in the audition. So it's just a solo dance piece that they do. So the dance for the dance programs, like the audition, it's important, right? That this is what
Yeah.
you're going to do. Similarly with the music auditions, right? So you want to go to music school because you're an oboe player or you're a violin player or a cellist. So, you've been doing this all your life. Or you just discovered it, or you picked up the clarinet when you were in fourth grade, and you were like, this is kind of an interesting and weird, odd instrument, but let's try it.
Right.
And you start to realize that you're kind of good at what you do, and you kind of really love it, and all of the time that you've been putting into practicing your instrument, you actually like doing it,
Yeah.
and you like the music that you are learning to express yourself with your instrument through, or through your instrument anyway. But you are and you say, you know what, I think I want to study this. I want to study the trumpet in college. So then there's the same thing, that there's an audition there where either the school will give you some pieces that you have to do. Either they give you a choice of a couple of pieces, or they basically say you have to do these pieces. That might vary from instrument. That's the thing with the music schools. It's not just one set of guidelines. Every instrument is a different audition process, because they're just different. So they might want to hear different things from you. And there's also vocals, right? If you remember, as a music school, there's often vocal performance, singing, opera, classical. So, you know, in that music school, you're sometimes sending a recording of you playing as a first round. They say they like it, and then they might bring you back in person, and then you're playing for them either a piece you've prepared based on their list, a piece you've prepared that you've chosen.
Yeah.
Because there's often that option too, for you to show something about the kind of music that you like to play. It might be very different than the traditional cello music. You might do something alternative, or you might be playing a rock song on your cello. But whatever it is, you're artists, so they
Right.
want to see how you express yourself. So the performing arts, those three big headings, those are going to really be auditions. I would say the other arts, the visual arts, film, photography, writing programs. If you're a dramatic writing student who wants to be a playwright or a screenwriter or a TV writer, all of those kinds of subjects, of disciplines, will require portfolios. So then those vary among each one of the different disciplines, is what's in that portfolio. You know, in a film, for a filmmaker, it doesn't always necessarily have to be a film. You know, as a filmmaker, you're a storyteller. So the
Right.
filmmaking portfolios, interestingly, are a lot of writing. They give you different prompts to tell stories in different ways. So there are a lot of writing assignments, and then they often say, they're like, well, sure. I mean, if you have made a film, you have a short, you know, you can give us 5 minutes of video, and that can be whatever you want it to be, or that can be one piece that's 2 minutes, another piece that's 2 minutes, if you have it. But in a lot of cases with something like that, they often say, you know, if you haven't made a film, that's okay. That's what we're here to do, is to train you how to make films.
Right.
But if you've got stories to tell, that's what's important to us.
Right.
So you'll have a camera in your hand on the first day. We'll show you how to use that stuff. And you may not, again, like I said with theater, you may not have had any film equipment at your school. You may
Right.
never have seen that, but maybe you've made some with your phone. Maybe you've made some movies with your friends on your phone, and you're figuring out how to frame and how to do this, and what the different shots are, and how to edit, and because you're using apps and you're using
Right.
software in your computer. So they're trying to see what you've figured out, and the writing portfolios are basically the same, right? There's a lot of things you're giving writing samples, you know.
Right.
So if it's a photography or a design student of any kind, graphic design, costume design, set design, you know, architectural design, you're giving a portfolio that is showing the work that you've done, whether it's a paper portfolio in person, or in these days more on your computer. You know, you're going to see people's photographs, you're going to see the costume designs that they've done for their school play, so you're going to see pictures of their sketches, but also photos of the finished product. And
Yeah.
maybe you'll have a student who'll bring in a costume with them to their audition and say, here's the dress. You know, we've had that too. So,
That's
you
nice.
know, it's interesting with the arts, because they are varied so much with
Yeah.
what you need to prepare, you know.
Now, while you were talking there, my mind kind of went on stage,
Hmm.
as it relates to both film and um, theater productions, and more specifically, those that are kind of behind the scenes.
Hmm.
So, not the artists that are engaged in the drama itself, not the stars of the show, but I'm thinking of the stagehands
Yeah.
and the lighting crew and all of those that create special effects and that make the magic, if you will, come alive.
Yeah.
That's part of the arts as well,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that part of film and theater, might there might be a student out there that has a passion for that level of creativity. You know, we all work under the lights. You know, we're under lights now. Some,
Right.
you know, we've got to be under the lights. It makes a big difference, but you can really create a mood or change a scene very clearly by the artistic use of light. Um, and so what would you say for a student who perhaps is interested in going into a BFA specializing in, light production?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that you are so right in what you're saying, and I'm so glad that you're making a point of this. You know, you could go to a Broadway show and you see a play that has 4 people in it. There are so many so many people behind the scenes. There are way more, even in a big cast show, there are way more people backstage than there are on stage. It's all we see as audience is what's there. That's all we see. But right off stage, like right there, there are stagehands who are making all the different flats come down, the backgrounds go up and down. They're moving, the furniture is moving in and out. You know, in Broadway, a lot of that's automated, but there's somebody who's pressing buttons and taking cues. There are dressers who are right in the wings helping the actors make quick changes. There are so many. There's a stage manager up in the booth calling all the, what we say, calling the cues. So saying, lighting 3, go, cue couch, all of that to keep on top of everything, to make sure the whole thing runs as a well-oiled machine. There are so many jobs in the arts
Right.
that you don't even know about until you start to study it or you do it. Even in your community theater, right? You're in a community theater and you're like, well, somebody is taking the tickets, somebody's selling the tickets, somebody's the house manager and making sure that the seats are all in order and we're welcoming the people in, we're giving them. So there's that. There's the people behind the scenes who are working the show that night, like we said, doing set changes and making the curtain go and being on, if there's a spotlight operator, those are people with a special skill because it's not easy for everybody, right? And then you've got the people who made it happen that aren't there that night because they were, like you said, the designers. So who designed the lighting for the show, who designed the set for the show, the costumes for the show, the sound for the show. And where did so there's creativity in all of that. And everyone, it's such a collaborative art form, and that's what I think is so exciting. And in a lot of the arts in general, not all of the arts, right? If you're a painter, it's often that you're just painting on your own, right? It's different than putting on a show or putting together a film, for example, right? In a film, you look at, you all know, you've all seen the credits, right? From on the end of a movie, you're like, are you kidding me? They're still going? Like, oh, it's mind-blowing how many opportunities there are to create film in whatever. And you may say, like, I love movies, I'm going to go to school to study film. Okay, but once you get there, you start to learn about all this stuff. There's the film director, but then there's the cinematographer, and then there's the there's all the editor. The editor is so important in the storytelling because they're taking all that footage and helping the director tell the story. Like, there are so many pieces to the teams that make films and the teams that make theater and the teams that make a dance. The dance productions would be, I would say, similar to what we're talking about with theater. The same people are backstage and making it happen. But it's really, and that's not even to mention the playwright, the person who wrote the screenplay or wrote the play and then directed it and choreographed the ballet in Oklahoma. Someone had to, first of all, someone choreographed it originally that people are recreating, but then someone does the choreography for that particular show. And it's just mind-blowing and staggering to think of how many ways you can work in the art form that you've chosen to study. And when you study it, you start to learn those things. And you're like, oh, I never really thought about stage management. Or maybe there's someone who's a stage manager, but then says, oh, there's more? I could be the production manager, which is a higher level management position on a production. So even more stuff goes through that production man, because they're like, you know what? And then there's being a producer. Who's the person who's raising all the money to do all this stuff? Who's bringing in the director and the designers and the writers and the actors and the funders, the donors, all the people who are backing it? Who's getting the publicity? And there's publicity and marketing. It goes on. So I'm sorry I'm going on and on, but it's such an exciting thing. I'm glad that you brought it up because it's so important. So those students that are going in, they might go into a theater program as an actor because they're like, that's all I did in the school. Or I did work backstage in my school and I loved it. Or I got to assist the director when I was a junior in high school. And so I learned a lot observing her, or like I was stage manager, or I was the assistant to the stage manager. Like, you get to shadow people. So those are wonderful things to do. And then maybe you start off that way in theater, and if you're a designer, if you're a stage manager or a director, you are going to present a portfolio, right, of your work, of the work you've done. Like we used to say at NYU, just put down everything that you've done that's related to theater, that's related to the arts, frankly, because we want to know you as an artist. You might be applying to a drama program, but you're also a photographer or a poet. So we want to know that stuff. And then, like, is it shows you've been in, shows you've worked on, extracurricular theater work, summer theater camp, working in your community theater, all of these different classes you've taken, competitions you've been in, awards you've won. Those are all things that we want to know on your, like, resume that you're addressed to say, like, we just want to get to know you. What have you done in theater and you're less like, I did this and then I did this workshop once. Cool, awesome, great. We want to know what you're interested in. So those students that are doing all the like you said, the behind the scenes work. They have an artistic review like everybody else, and they may come into, I guess the point I was getting to is you might come into a film program or a theater program as one thing or one interest, but because you're learning stuff when you're there and you're experiencing stuff when you're there, you might come out as that and something else, or you've left that behind and you're like, no, this is my path. So you might find your way into these places. So it's just very exciting. I get very excited because I just love when students go into the arts. It's very exciting.
Well, I promise nothing but drama, and I'm getting it. So I'm delivering. So no, it's all good. No, you are absolutely right. I always feel like the people backstage, whether it be the light crew or behind the spot or pulling the rope for the curtain or encouraging people when they come off stage to, break a leg, whatever it might be, behind the scenes, they don't get enough credit,
Right.
even on the night of production. Unfortunately, they don't nearly get the applaud they deserve. And there are plenty of, I was introduced to a student a year or so ago who had this insatiable desire to be a professional lightman. Like, I don't even know if that's the word you call it, but it's the person who, does the light magic for stage productions.
Uh-huh.
And, there's an art form to that, obviously. And he was just like totally engrossed in that and wanted to just do nothing but that. And so, we had many conversations about it. And so it introduced me to the level of love that the arts has, not just on that little dot that is on stage that you're supposed to make sure you get to,
Right.
and belongs to you, right? That's your dot. So, but it's more than that. It's bigger and broader, and in some ways more creative, I think. Just to be able to do so much with things like lighting and moving a set and making a set transform into something that it wasn't 5 seconds ago, and do it in like a matter of moments. And like, where did that wall go? Or, how'd they hide that dresser? Where'd those stairs come from? Who climbed through that window? I didn't even see it there. All of those wonderful things that are exciting that take place behind the scenes. Students, I think they kind of pigeonhole themselves, and this goes beyond, I think, the arts, right? But in any and every degree and program or area of college interest, students tend to pigeonhole themselves into, I want to do that, and there seems to be a very specific path to get there, but not realizing that around whatever that is that they want to do are hundreds of thousands of other that's that they can be a part of, or become, and are very lucrative careers, in the end, lucrative careers. And to be able to study those and know about them up front and understand the facets of all that which is involved in the arts is really exciting. I did not go to school for the arts, but I was in theater, which was kind of exciting. And I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I also played the trumpet when I was in high school, right? And went to school thinking I was going to play it in college. And it just didn't go right for me in college. It wasn't the right fit for me. So, I gave up the trumpet. And that's okay too, but that wasn't my direct path to get to college. It was a kind of like an add-on. It was an interest that I wanted to enjoy as a hobby and not as a career or a challenge for a degree. So yeah. So, do you see any big differences between students in terms of what is expected of them in the admissions process or the journey to college, between those students who want to go into theater versus those who maybe want to go into music?
It's a good. I'm sorry. Any differences between the two in terms of?
leading up to the admissions process.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
I mean, we can generally say that if you took all the students who go to college, there's a general group of things you need to accomplish. Application, references, essays, just that general list of things that you're supposed to submit. But then when you get into the arts, I feel like there's a few extras that are
Yeah,
important, and you've got auditions, you've got portfolios, and depending on what area of the arts you're talking about,
yeah.
you have to submit different things. So, what kind of different others would you see to be between the theater and the and music students?
Right. I think, definitely you're right. When if you're an arts student who wants to study their art in college, and you're adding this arts application process, the artistic review process, to your college application process. So it's like two parallel processes that are happening, right,
Right.
simultaneously. So it's
Right.
twice the work for arts families because there's the artistic review process has its own dates and deadlines and requirements and guidelines to sift through and materials to gather, right? Just like the application does.
Yeah.
So it is double the work. So it's double it's just double everything. So then it means a lot more management of the process and making sure that you're organized. So I think in that way, the theater and music students, for example, it's similar, right? Because you have to know, you start learning about the programs themselves. You do your research just like you would for college. If you're an art student, you're looking at the college or university as well as the music department or the
Okay.
theater department or the film department, and you want to make sure it's the right one for you. So,
Right.
you're working with your IEC. Like if we were working together with the same student, for example, right? You would be helping them build a college list that is a good set of schools that they would are really good fit for them or they're a
Right.
good fit for.
Right.
And then I would be saying, okay, cool, that's great. Let's look at the theater departments at these schools too, or the whatever. So that they want to make sure that they're if they're going to say a music program, they want to go to a program that they feel is in line with the way they approach their own training. Or if it isn't, is it something that intrigues them that they're like, oh, this one actually sounds really interesting. Like I never really thought about music in that way, and that kind of is exciting to me. Whereas another school may say, well, the way they approach it, it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way, so I don't think I want to go to that program. So the research for both is certainly something that's extremely important at the beginning. I think the research on that program specifically is helpful, I would say, for three reasons. If you do deep dives on, especially on in the departments that you are interested in, at the schools that you're applying to. Three things. The first is that it would help refine your college list a little bit for the reasons I just said. If you're looking at 12 music programs and you're like, okay, now I've like done kind of a deep dive on like 12 programs. So now I have a pretty good understanding of what it means to study music at the college level. And I have a pretty more clarity on what I want in a program and what I don't. And these two programs over there, I think I can let those go because they're not in line with what I'm thinking. So that refines your list. That's the
Right.
first reason the research is important. The second is that during the artistic review for music, for theater, because again, those are performing arts, so that they may have the opportunity. Your evaluators may ask you questions like, "Why do you want to come to our program?"
Uh,
Right? So now you've done a deep dive. So when they say, well, why do you want to come to our program? You say, oh, you want to know why I want to come to your program? I'll tell you why I want to come to your program. And then you rattle off all these wonderful details about their program and what excites you about it. You have this beautifully complex, comprehensive, and eloquent answer to that. They sit back and they go, this person actually wants to come to our department. Like we're not just on their list because we're the three letters NYU or whatever.
right.
We're not just the name for them. They actually are interested in the department, and then that elevates them as applicants, elevates you as an applicant. And then
Yes.
the third is fast forward to April, and you get into 7 of the 10 schools that you apply to. Well, you've already figured out the music department or the theater department in your head. So you kind of prioritize them so that you don't have to do a scramble in April to figure out where you're going to apply to. So I belabor that a little bit because it's super important in the process, I think. And then I mean, they're similar because they're theater and music are similar. I'm trying to think. I'm talking about the similarities because I'm having a hard time with the sort of necessarily the differences. So I'm going to answer your question on in a backwards way. But
Okay.
you know, because they're performing arts and you're going to have to do auditions, there are things to prepare. So it's sifting through the guidelines and saying, okay, as I was saying before with music, what does each one of these departments want me to prepare? Are there required pieces that I have to play? Or what are the parameters for what I can present to them? Is it 2 pieces? Is it 3 pieces? Is it a classical? Is it a jazz piece? Like, yeah, what kind of music am I studying, right? Am I going for a classical program? Am I going for a jazz program? Am I going for a contemporary music program? So, there's a lot of thinking you have to do ahead of time so that you can kind of target where you want to do, what kind of department you want to be in, and then that will inform the artistic review requirements that you have to put together. And then you say, okay, I just went down all these music programs, and you're like, okay, so for that one I could have to do that, and this one I can do a contemporary, and then like anything else I want to do, cool, this one I have to do 2 contemporary pieces, this one I have to do 2 classical pieces. Okay, so if I write all these down and if I figure this out, then maybe I have to learn 2 classical pieces, 3 contemporary pieces, and then there's one sort of little wild card piece that school said I could do anything I want, and I really love playing, hip hop music on my viola, so I'm gonna do that, right? So cool. So now I know 2 classical, 3 contemporaries, and I'm gonna create some hip hop thing for my viola. Cool. Now I know what I need to do.
Right.
And then you set off on the developing the material and saying like, okay, and then you start rehearsing and you start doing all of the work that you need to do to prepare it for the audition, whether that's on your own or if I would say many music students have a music teacher, either that they're working with in their school or privately, and then you start working on that material to make sure that it's up to where you need to be and best shows you off. I think that's a key here for both, is that and when you read about these, I'm sorry that I'm going on, Mark. It's
No,
like there's so much
I know.
But what I was going to say is that, the schools will talk about their artistic reviews probably a little slightly differently. Like, this is what we want to see. This is what we're trying to learn about you. This is what we'd like to discover about you. And so you can kind of get a sense of what do they want to know from me. I'm preparing this artistic material to give them, but what do they want to, what is it they want to learn? Do they want to learn my skills? Should I be playing the bumblebee? Should I be doing something like a super challenging, whatever instrument I'm doing, this, whichever this is. I played the clarinet for 1 semester. Yeah, whatever that is. And I did do the clarinet for 1 semester in 4th grade, and then my great grandmother, when I squeakily played something for her when I was 12, she said, "Come back in 20 years." That was the end of my career for my 80-year-old great grandmother in career in clarinetting. But so you're is it the skills? Is it my adeptness, my deftness on the keys that they're looking for, or are they looking for the expression, my artistic expression? Like, if maybe what are they looking for, and what level are they looking for? Like, what level of piece in the music piece do I need to be at? Like, there's a level of difficulty, right? The more difficult piece that you can pull off, the better, because then they're gonna be like, oh, that's impressive, right? Whereas if you pick easy pieces, that's where it's a little different, maybe in the acting. There's a difference.
There's a difference.
You can pick monologues. I mean, yeah, I guess you could pick monologues that are easier to do, but it's a different set of skills than in the music, where you literally have to have physical skills to play these instruments, putting vocal music aside. So it does become the level of difficulty, which also applies to vocal too. You could sing Happy Birthday, or you could sing an aria. Those are 2 very different levels of difficulty. So there are a lot of factors to consider when you're applying to these schools. So okay, I'm going to pause, because if there are any questions or whatever that you have.
I'm you go on, but what's important are the details of your response. And even though, I asked the question very specifically because there may be some who are considering a musical path rather other than a theatrical path. And so I think it was important to kind of like expose some of those differences, although more similarities than differences. But in that process of kind of talking through it, we're able to identify some of those very important factors along that path that are very, very crucial in understanding. Um, One thing that kind of got me thinking about your services more importantly, Chris, is maybe if you could take just a moment to kind of describe why someone would, because you mentioned right there, you said if someone hired us, you know, you and me, right, and people were like, why would I need two people? Like,
Right, right.
what is he talking about? And I was like, yay, right? But other people are like, no, one's enough. But why would someone want or need to or find advantage, not to get into a school, but in the process,
Yeah.
To hire someone like you, an IEC like you, Chris? Just kind of give us some insight there.
Yeah, I think, I think there are, as you're encountering either college counselors in your school or independent educational consultants who help you with the college applications.
Right.
If you are a student who has a particular specialty area, like the arts, like athletics, for example, right? If you're a student who there's a whole other process when you're dealing
That's
with
right.
athletic scholarships and what that takes and who you need to speak to and what applications you need to do and what do you have to get someone to see you play, and there's a whole other world of that. And there are sometimes with these specialty worlds, you heard all the stuff I was just saying about the arts applications. There are plenty of wonderfully amazing and talented and extremely capable consultants who will help you with the academic components, but they are helping all kinds of students. And sometimes when you have a specialty that is so filled with all these other details,
Right.
they're saying, I only get a theater kid, I don't know, once every few years. So I can't keep all that in my head.
Right.
So if you come into my consulting practice, I will be so happy to help you. And with the whole building your college list, helping you with the essays and the applications and getting it all organized and making sure that you're on schedule, I can do all of that just like I would do for any other family. But you do have this need because you're a theater student.
Right.
So I happen to know somebody who could help you with the artistic review piece of that.
Right.
Right. And so that's where I would come in because I
Got
don't
it.
do the applications. I just focus on that. So
Perfect.
I could say the family could come to me and say, hi, so I'm working with Mark right now. And Mark was like, that's a lot. I can't do that. I can't do that too. So they come to me and then I say, great, I will help you with that. And then I work with Mark a bit to consult on the college list together and say, like, are we in the right range? There's a lot to think about there, and then also and then I work with the family and work with the student on developing on researching the schools, just like I was saying, organizing dates of artistic review and developing material. So you're right, Mark, you're right, it's two of us.
It's two of
So
us.
that's the challenge. It's the challenge, right? Because
Yes.
then, but it also in some ways, it's hard because be a student being in the arts or a student being in athletics, it costs a lot more money for the family already, just that,
Right.
because they're doing practice, they need equipment, they need travel, they're going on so and then in the arts kids, there's the same thing, they need equipment, they need instruments,
Right. Right.
lessons, they need dance lessons and acting lessons and singing lessons and instrument lessons. So there's already, so it's even worse. Like now I'm thinking I'm making it even worse because I'm saying they're already outlaying all this extra stuff and they're like, and for college app. But what I would say is that yes, it's an extra expense. If it's something that is manageable for a family to take on a specialty consultant, if they're IEC, there are a lot of IECs that do happen to be in an area where they have a lot of arts kids, or maybe there's a very strong arts high school in their
Right.
town or nearby, and so they do get a lot of arts kids. So they don't need to send you to somebody who's, I don't know. I'm going on here, but I think there's a lot of it's a good thing if you can manage it, and also there are people that will also work with you if you can't there are ways to get the same help. So that's another thing to think about.
So in the event they are not working with me, but they want to get in touch with you, which would be a sad separation.
Sad.
So it would be depressing. But in that event, how would someone get in touch with you? I want to give you just a second to kind of share some information on, we joked about nothing but drama, but that's the name of your business. So,
Right.
right. So share a little bit about how someone might get in touch with you.
Sure. So if someone was interested in working with me, you could, there's my website, which is surprise, nothingbutdrama.com. And I've written a lot there. I have a few videos on there just explaining kind of how I work with students.
Super.
So it's a good way to kind of learn about that. And then there you can very easily click on a little button to schedule an initial consultation with me, and then we can talk a little bit further. So it's very easy.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. It has been such a fun time tonight. The hour goes by so fast.
So fast.
And I'm only sorry it's not 2 hours long, but our listeners may be glad it's over. I don't know. But we're so sad to see you go tonight, but we're so glad to have you here. And we wish you all the best. And of course, I can't wait till our next time and our next conversation. Thank you so much for being with us tonight at Capstone Educational Consultants and our College Journey Conversations. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night.